Yo, what up, Street Dogs? Eric Kim. Alright, so a thought. So the thought is this: money ain't real. So kind of comes from this like Yandhi quote from Kanye's like, money ain't real, time ain't real, money ain't real, time ain't real. So what do I mean by that? Money ain't real? Let me kind of explain. So first and foremost, obviously, like, we need money to pay our rent, to buy groceries, to buy meat and stuff like that. But beyond that, what is money for and what is money exactly? So actually, when I was living in Vietnam, I had a lot of time to think about this, and now we're kind of going through this whole like brave new world, this brave new digital economy, whatever. I've actually been philosophizing a little bit more about money. So first and foremost, consider we've all evolved from these primitive ape-like hominid things before. And so I was like recently, I was just rewatching Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey, you know, the beginning scene, the advent of mankind. You see a bunch of like chimp gorilla looking things kind of like being all stupid and stuff. But it's interesting because essentially the way I see it is money is embodied trust or labor between human beings. It's this embodied trust, it's a contract, it's kind of like a pseudo law. Because you think about it, money itself doesn't really, like, you can't eat paper money, and I mean, I guess you could, but it's not going to give you any nutrition or anything like that. And so, you know, think about it, why do people get so gaga about money? And so part of me thinks that, you know, if you think of that life as a video game, money is kind of just like it's kind of like points in a video game, but it's also a little bit stupid too, because like if you ever played Diablo 2, past a certain point, gold, which might be money, isn't really worth anything. I mean, the goal of Diablo 2 is for your character to level up and for you to get new, awesome, rare items. It actually isn't for you to just get more gold, because gold is kind of like, I mean, you could use gold to buy Titan portals and mana and stuff like that, and potions, but gold is essentially kind of useless, at least in the Diablo universe. Now, in today's world, you know, the world that we live in, we're all about the monies. Now, one of the things that was very interesting for me to study was studying the Iliad by Homer. And this is, you know, before the advent of money and currency. So back then, how did people measure wealth? By the land you own, by, you know, cattle, slaves. Back then, you know, women skilled in handicrafts and stuff like that. And generally, or like, you know, talents of gold. I think one talent of gold was like, a lot is like 70 pounds of gold, like 30 kilos, kind of a lot. So, but actually even the thing that's interesting is back then, Achilles, who's like, you know, the anti-hero of the whole story, he essentially, you know, he gets super bitter because I think it was Agamemnon, I think, who takes Briseis, who he considers his like prized woman, and, you know, essentially insults Achilles, and Achilles ain't having it, so he gets kind of bitter about it and refuses to kind of cooperate. And, you know, and Agamemnon offers him a huge, you know, sum of wealth. He offered him like 10 talents of gold, which is like, you know, you do the maths, right? I think in today's dollars, like 1 talent of gold might either be worth $1.3 million or $100 million, depending on the maths you want to do. He offered him like, you know, 5 essentially cities or towns with fertile lands and stuff like that. He offered, you know, all these rare stuff, and then essentially Achilles was like, yo, even if you took all the grains of sand, turned it into gold, and you offer that as a reward, or all the, you know, all the gold of Persia times 10 or times 1,000,000, he would still not accept it, because to him the human life was by far the most valuable thing. So even for myself, if you could offer me $1 billion, but I only had 10 more years to live, versus I could live another 100 years in excellent health and vitality and live like a pauper for the rest of my life, I would choose to live to be a pauper, because no sum of money is worth your health, your longevity, your life, the quality of your life, and the amount of strength and vigor in your life. Now, I think the reason why we get so money hungry now and so money obsessed is actually kind of a philosophical thing. I think it's based on like Benjamin Franklin, utilitarianism, a lot of notions we get from England. And the basic notion is we just want money for the sake of money because we tend to attach our moral self in our moral value and our wealth. And you know, there's different theories behind it, but the basic notion is to be a virtuous human being is to make as much money as you can and spend as little money as you can in order to contribute to society and the family. So essentially it's like it's kind of weird. It's like in some ways you try to become like insanely rich but also kind of a Scrooge. And then the final goal, which sounds virtuous, which is to donate your money back to society, institutions, education, whatever. But I think this is kind of a sucker's game. But anyways, taking it back to the notion of money. So money is not real in that sense. Generally speaking, they call it fiat currency. Fiat stands for faith. So fiat currency means faith-based currency, which means money is just trust in the government or whatever institution you believe in. And at least for now, the reason why we put faith in the US dollar, my theory is because America has the biggest military presence in the world. So even if America doesn't want to pay back her debts, you know, we control the military and we control the planet in that sense. So I think that's why, at least for now, there's still faith in American currency. And then actually what I find is so interesting with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and stuff like that, by the way, I own Bitcoin and DGB, which stands for Digibyte. The reason I find it interesting is that I really think that the next big wave or innovation in terms of technology is probably going to be money. Because, I mean, obviously, who doesn't want to make more money, right? And especially in today's world, because, you know, things are becoming less and less physical. Like, even now, like, there's some places they don't accept paper currency no more because they're afraid that you might catch like COVID on paper money or whatever. And so certainly it's going to be like kind of this future of like Visa, PayPal and stuff like that. But I think slowly but surely, I mean, it might take a long time, like 10, 15 years, I think we'll start to see cryptocurrency becoming more mainstream in society where, you know, there's going to be a certain point where if technology gets good enough and there's an option, I think small merchants will not want to get a 2% fee taken from Visa or PayPal, and they're going to want to bypass it. Or even in the future where, you know, let's say institutions crumble or people have less faith in the government, private individuals, like, you know, if I'm making a transaction to Russia, I'll probably prefer to pay in Bitcoin rather than pay in, you know, whatever currency that I have, because at least this way it takes out the middleman, which is like the government or the banks and stuff like that. And so certainly any kind of technology what cuts out the middleman, I think generally tends to be a good technology. So once again, monies could be a good way to facilitate exchanges between peoples. So honestly, now that I think about it, for me, at the end of the day, what is money good for? Money is good for two things: paying rent, right? And the second thing is buying meat. So as long as I could eat meat and I could pay my rent at the end of every month, I'm happy. And that's all I personally need. And you know, when I talk about rent, I talk about Wi-Fi connection, stuff like that. Beyond that, there's really nothing that I personally need. I mean, I think at this point, like, I still encourage you to be entrepreneurial and start businesses and do online-based entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But maybe in terms of charging money, don't even treat it like charging money in order to bring a bunch of money, but it's more of like just to treat it like a game. Is you're charging money in order to just kind of keep track, keep score, and to give others a little bit skin in the game, because generally when you give things away for free, people don't appreciate it as much. So yeah, maybe that's my thought. Money is a game. Use it to keep score for fun, but ultimately it doesn't really matter that much.